There was a former Undersecretary of Defense who was invited to give a speech at a large conference, about 1,000 people. And he was standing on the stage with his cup of coffee and a styrofoam cup, giving his prepared remarks with his PowerPoint behind him. And he took a sip of his coffee and he smiled and he looked down at the coffee. And then he went off script and he said, last year I spoke at this exact same conference. Last year I was still the Undersecretary. And when I spoke here last year, they flew me here business class. And when I arrived at the airport, there was somebody waiting for me to take me to my hotel. And they took me to my hotel and they had already checked me in and they just took me up to my room. And the next morning I came downstairs and there was someone waiting in the lobby to greet me and they drove me to this here same venue. They took me through the back entrance and took me into the green room and handed me a cup of coffee in a beautiful ceramic cup. He says, I'm no longer the Undersecretary. I flew here coach. I took a taxi to my hotel and I checked myself in. When I came down the lobby this morning, I took another taxi to this venue. I came in the front door and found my way backstage, and when I asked someone, do you have any coffee? He pointed to the coffee machine in the corner, and I poured myself a cup of coffee into this here styrofoam cup. He says the lesson is, the ceramic cup was never meant for me. It was meant for the position I held. I deserve a styrofoam cup. Remember this. As you gain fame, as you gain fortune, as you gain position and seniority, people will treat you better. They will hold doors open for you. They will get you a cup of tea and coffee without you even asking. They will call you sir and ma'am, and they will give you stuff. None of that stuff is meant for you. That stuff is meant for the position you hold. It is meant for the level that you have achieved of leader or success or whatever you want to call it. But you will always deserve a styrofoam cup. Remember that. Remember that lesson of humility and gratitude. You can accept all the free stuff. You can accept all the perks. Absolutely, you can enjoy them. But just be grateful for them and know that they're not for you. I remember getting off the Acela. I took the Acela from New York to Washington, D.C. And I got off the train like everybody else. And I was walking down the platform like everyone else. And I walked past General Norty Schwartz, who used to be the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, the head of the Air Force. And here I did, see a guy in a suit, schlepping his own suitcase down the platform just like me. And just a couple months ago, he was flying on private jets and he had an entourage and other people carried his luggage. But he no longer held the position, and so now he got to drag his own suitcase. And never did it sort of remind me more that none of us deserve the perks that we get. We all deserve a styrofoam cup.
Passion is not an actionable word. It's correct, that those who do the things that they're passionate about do better, but it's not helpful advice. And so the question is, where does passion come from? Passion is a result. Passion is an energy. Passion is the feeling you have when you're engaged in something that you love. Passion is the feeling you have that you would probably do this for free, and you can't believe somebody pays you to do it. And I think we mistake that passion is something we do in our private lives, but it shouldn't be done, in our careers, for example. And I'm a firm believer that you are who you are. And anybody who says, I'm different at home than I am at work, in one of those two places, you're lying. And the goal is to make everything you do in home and at work something that you have excitement to do. So how do you find the things that you're excited to do? Well, it's actually easier than you think. What are the things that you love to do? How can you recreate that feeling and be paid for it? So what are the things that I do on the weekend, right? I love, I'm very involved in the art world. I love to go to museums and galleries, but I love to go see dance and performances because I want to see how others are interpreting the world. So that inspires me. New ideas, new thoughts, new ways of looking at the world are things that interest me privately, and I seek it out and pay money for it, right? So does that mean I have to have a career in the arts? No, it means I have to have a career where new ideas are explored, where people are experimenting and trying things out, and I have to explore new ideas and try things out, and I'm just as excited to go to work every day as I am to, go do something on a Saturday night. And so the idea of finding your passion is ironically simple, because you should be doing stuff that you enjoy sometimes. What is the stuff that you enjoy, and then what is the stuff that you love? Who are the people that you love, and what do they all have in common?
My story is kind of not that different to a lot of people, to be honest. I had a good career in advertising, was working on new business pitches and stuff for the company I worked for, and I lived through September 11th in New York. You know, September 11th affected many people in different ways, and one of the things it did to me was it made me feel like my job was stupid. I remember trying to come, and my office was really close to Ground Zero, and I remember coming back to work when we were allowed to, because the area was closed for a few weeks. I remember going back to the office just thinking, what value am I providing here? Like this industry and my job are ridiculously stupid, you know? And so I already had an eye on sort of doing something else, and I had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I considered myself more of a marketer than an advertiser anyway. And so I quit and started my own business with a partner, and went to do something that I thought was in my vision, not theirs. And it went really well for 3 years. I mean, when I say well, meaning we survived. Over 90% of all small businesses fail in the first 3 years. Right. And we didn't. So I mean, like, you joined a very elite club, you know? But year 4 was very different for me. I had already bought out my partner, and I completely lost my passion for what I was doing. And I didn't know why. And people say stupid things to you like, follow your passion. You're like, I'm doing the same thing and I don't love it anymore. Like, do what you love. You're like, same thing, you know? So I was confused as to what it was. Plus I was embarrassed, because superficially my life was pretty good. I made a decent living. We had amazing clients. Like, we had blue chip clients that we had no business having at our little company. We did great work, well respected by our clients, and yet I didn't feel it. And so I was very embarrassed by the fact that it's like, you know, I'm unhappy, you know, it's like everything looks just fine, you know? So I didn't talk about it. And I would say that all of my energy, instead of going into building my business, all of my energy went into pretending that I was happier, more successful, and more in control than I actually felt, which is a pretty dark space. I would go to business conferences to learn how to build my business, and that actually made me feel worse, because I'd have all these people standing on the stage telling us how we should build our businesses, and all I could hear was everything I was doing wrong, as opposed to what I should be doing. And so it actually made me feel even more depressed. And it wasn't until a good friend came to me, concerned about me. She saw that there was something different, and she was worried for me. I remember the conversation. She was very nervous, sort of coming to me, but like, you know, trying to approach, basically challenging you, like, your life is not as you claim it is. And it really allowed me to admit that I was unhappy. And that gave me the courage to find a solution. The fact that I had a friend in my corner who was there that I could cry to and say, I don't know if I can do this, gave me courage to find a solution. And I was very lucky. There was a confluence of events that happened around the same time. Long story short, I was able to discover that this natural occurring pattern, based on the biology of human decision making, that every single organization on the planet exists on the same 3 levels: what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. Everybody knows what they do. I knew what I did. Some people know how they do it. I could tell you what made me different or special or stand out from my competitors, but I couldn't tell you why. And so I realized, until I was able to articulate that piece, that my life was out of balance. Everything was out of balance. So I was obsessed with this thing called the why. Figured out how to find my why, restored my passion to levels I'd never experienced before, unbelievable. Did what anybody would do or does when you find something beautiful, you share it with the people you love. And that's what I did. So I shared it with my friends. And my friends started making crazy life changes. And they would invite me to their homes to share it with the people they loved. And I would literally, it all started, I would stand in someone's living room in New York City, and people would sit on the floor, and I would give this talk about the why. That's how it all began. And people just kept inviting me to do it, and I would help people find their why for $100 on the side. That's how it started. So there was never a time where I said, this will be my career. This I can make my millions with this thing. You know, this thing has commercial value. It was never that. It was always something to share for free, or at least it wasn't a commercial or academic exercise. It was always something just to be shared because it had value, and that was it. And so that's how I went on.